Hi, this is Simon Jeffrey. These are the deleted scenes for 7 Days of Plague. This scene came originally between the death of Adam and day 2, where Harry arrives at Mick's, or at the barn where Mick is hiding. And it was cut really because I felt it was weak as a scene. It felt like a good idea at the time to have this kind of nightmare sequence, but I think the main reason for me doing it was to have myself as a zombie at some point. But when I came to put that in the film, it was out of place a little bit. And also, for some reason, I decided to shoot it with no clothes on, and found the scene to be a little embarrassing to watch after that. So I thought, rather than regretting if I'd left it in, wanting to skip it every time, I thought I'd cut it. But I did like the bit at the end where Harry wakes up and drives down the empty road. And that was shot early in the morning. I just didn't really feel it worked within the film as a whole. This was the original scene 21 that was replaced by the scene where the Doctor comes to visit Harry to see how he's getting on. This was the scene that was there originally, and it was a sort of this full-length reminiscing scene which features Rhiannon Evans as Amy. And although it was a nice idea to have these flashback scenes to show a bit of the relationship between Harry and Amy before all this happened, within the context of the film as a whole, they came at the wrong time. They came in the last quarter of the film and slowed the pace down a bit, and it was a bit clumsy in the storytelling. It was not told as well as it could have been, but I was sorry to have cut Rhiannon out. When I say it was clumsy, I mean the idea of showing their relationship could have been done in a more interesting way than this. And even though the scene that replaced it was, 4 times the length maybe, but I don't think it feels it. Because there's a lot more said in this time. I think this doesn't really further the story in any way, but it was a shame to have to cut so much of Rhiannon's part out, so I apologise.
It's time. Let's do this upstairs, shall we?
Now, this scene was a new scene that I shot after I edited most of the film, and most of it is still in the film, but there was just this extra bit where the Doctor goes on to talk about Dylan and how he was the one that saved Harry in the first place, and that he would be safe with him and so on, and it was a bit awkward, and it was more to try and explain or justify Dylan's character in the film, but I thought it might actually look a bit transparent that was what I was trying to do, because it's not the best storytelling. But I also used the scene to fill in a few other plot holes, and one of them was, a more definite definition of what the zombies actually are. Um, which, when I watched the film for the first time all the way through, I felt that you might still want to know a little bit more about what they are. But again, it all comes down to when you watch a scene within the whole piece. It may work on its own, but within the whole film, it was just a couple of minutes too long, and so I decided to trim it back to just the story of the Doctor, and I think that makes for more interesting viewing. And it doesn't jump out so much, quite so obviously, as being exposition to block gaps in the plot. When Callum and I were shooting, we didn't have a script to work from, but we had the idea of going out with Nightshot and doing some kind of POV slash quite rough footage of the two characters before any of the zombies really appear. Just talking about, what they should do if they see one, etc. And there was this bit here where they find a bag with a coat in it from someone who was who'd gone missing the night before, but this was really just to get round the fact that Callum had accidentally been wearing the wrong jacket for half of the stuff we shot. But again, when you put it in the final film, it looked a little too raw. I mean, if the whole film had been like this, it would have worked in that context, but it didn't fit in with the rest of the style of the film. It just seemed to be a little less precise, a little less rehearsed perhaps, and not as slick perhaps in the edit. But there are still a few shots of it remaining in the beginning of the next night vision sequence in the film. But I mean, there were one or two things in the scene here which do help sort of bridge some holes, but they weren't worth keeping in for the sake of keeping the whole scene in. I mean, that was not a big enough persuader, really. But this thing about that's the trail where the zombies have come up from the river, just to show that they have managed to get through. But it wasn't really needed. This was one of the alternate endings that I shot with James Turner of Turner Productions Movies, and it was kind of a cameo, a surprise cameo at the end. It was intended to be, and I shot two deliberately because I didn't know which one I'd want to use. And this first one was the happier ending where Amy turns up at the end. But it wasn't done particularly well, and part of the reason it didn't make it was because of technical problems, like the lighting doesn't match because it was shot at different times of the day. But I didn't know if a happy ending would seem too cheesy, so I went and shot an alternate version of the scene, but that too unfortunately didn't make it.
Come on. Let's fly.
This is the second alternate ending, without the reappearance of Amy at the end, because I didn't know whether her coming back would be too Hollywood or too cheesy. But I think, as it happened, Sexy Female Zombie Hunters was a more worthwhile story to tell about Amy's character, and neither of these endings really wrapped it up in a satisfying way. So sorry, James, for deleting your cameos. Let's go.